Thank you all for coming this afternoon. I want to call the meeting to order and start by reading the statement. Members of the committee are hereby advised of their duty under the State Government Ethics Act to avoid conflicts of interest or the appearance of conflict, and are instructed to refrain from participating in any matter coming before this committee with respect to which there is a conflict of interest or the appearance thereof. So please note any conflict accordingly. We'll start with the first agenda item and proceed accordingly with the approval of the minutes of the Executive Committee on January 18 of 2024. The materials, administrative materials, and I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Moving on to the approval of the council's meeting minutes from the January 19 meeting, 2024, on SharePoint as well. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So second.
To approve and recommend to the council, which is what we are doing here, Alice. Thank you, Alice. Approved and properly seconded. Any comments, observations? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you. We will now turn to the report of the Finance and Audit Committee, given by Chair Matt Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. These are all motions of the committee. In your materials, you have the 2023 audit of the State Bar's financial reports. Does anyone on the committee have any questions about that report that I cannot answer? Seeing none, it'd be our recommendation for finance and audit for approval of the audit.
The motion from the committee requires no second. Any questions, comments, observations? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Yes, sir. Alice would like to make a comment. Yes, sir.
I just want to point out to you that it was a clean audit, completely unmodified. Our auditors give us great marks for the condition of our financial records, and that is largely due to JSN. She was sitting back here, and she does an incredible job of handling our books. And they make a great point of saying how wonderful it is to work for her because everything is so well organized and prepared in advance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Now, I'll echo, the officers met with the auditors separately without the staff present, and Alice is spot on. They were very, very pleased. Jacob does an outstanding job, and management does a fantastic job with preparing for the audit. So kudos to our wonderful staff.
Thank you. Moving on to the first quarter financial statements. They are in your materials. It's the recommendation of finance and audit that this be approved. Any questions?
So recommendation to the council from the Finance and Audit Committee needs no second. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next would be an increase in the 2024 capital expenses budget by $30,474 for office furniture. Alice, you want to say anything about that?
Just that we didn't budget so well in January when we were preparing for our new hires, and so we thought it would be nice to provide them with chairs and desks. That's what we need the money for.
Any questions on that?
All right, that is the recommendation from Finance and Audit to be made to the council. Any questions, comments, observations? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
Next item would be the amendment to the investment policy of the council. This is a request from the Alta Board of Trustees. for an amendment to the council's fiscal policy on permissible investments for state bar funds, including IALTA funds, to specify two governing statutes on investment funds of state agencies like the state bar. I can report that we received a memorandum of law on that, and it is the recommendation of Finance and Audit is that it be approved in the City Council. Any questions?
Recommendation to council from the Finance and Audit requires no second. No comments or questions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you. We shall now turn to the report of the Appointments Advisory Committee from our meeting earlier this week. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. President. We have 3 appointments with 3-year terms each commencing July 1st. We do have 1 appointment for Margaret Hunt, which she will be retiring, and we will actually make that appointment at the July meeting, but it was tabled until the July meeting. It is our recommendation that we reappoint William Oden to a 3-year term. You want to do this individual?
Does anyone object to us considering these as a group versus voting on them individually?
Moving right along, appoint Catherine Constantino of Durham to a 3-year term. Appoint Katie King of Raleigh to a 3-year term. And it would be the recommendation to appoint Jay Meyer as vice chair also for a 3-year term. Recommendation of appointments advisory, these be accepted and sent to council.
The recommendation is to council from the advisory committee. Any questions, comments, observations? It doesn't need a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Next one, this one's a little unique. This is for NC Leaf. We have 2 appointments for 3-year terms each. Their bylaws were amended to create 3-year terms instead of 1-year terms. So procedurally, we voted on this to terminate the 1-year terms of William R. Purcell and James R. Grant. They were appointed at the January meeting, and those appointments would have been effective June 30. Excuse me, the termination will be effective June 30, and both of them would get 3-year terms beginning July 1st, 2024, so they would extend through 2027. It'd be our recommendation that that be approved in City Council.
And that requires no second, but I want to be clear that we are talking about approving first the termination and then the reappointment that Matt just described. Any questions, comments, or observations about those recommendations? Any need for clarification? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that will go to council. Yes, that concludes.
You don't have to continue.
I'll take it from here. Item 4 on the agenda, proposed amendments for publication. The materials were on SharePoint as well, as I understand it. And so the first relates to amendments to the procedures for the administrative committee, transferring people to inactive status. That is the motion of a committee, and it needs no second. I'm reading it here. Yes. Motion of the administrative committee needs no second. Any questions, comments, or observations for this recommendation to council? Any need for clarification? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, as you will see, as you do see, is the proposed amendments to the disciplinary rules for trust account compliance program and random audit. You want to speak to those at all? Do you need to? Do you need to? Or? Well, let me just see. Yeah, that's another motion from the admin committee doesn't need a second, but I do want to make sure I take the time to see if there are any questions, comments, or observations about item 4.2. This is a motion from the issues committee, but it also needs no second because it's coming from a committee. Any questions, comments, or observations about any matters in item 4.2? Any need for clarification? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Item 5, there are no proposed rule amendments for publication this quarter for publication. And so we now will turn to item 6. We shall turn to Council Carmen Bannon for a report and presentation. So Carmen, the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. Well, as to the litigation report, it is in your materials, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none, proceed.
All right. I have a great way to orient myself to all of you here, but absent standing in front of the screen. But I addressed this, those of you on the grievance committee already saw a version of this earlier, but I just wanted to update you all on what has been going on in the Office of Counsel over the last quarter. We have had a lot of changes happening, and specifically, we have been working on improving our processes. So, just a little bit of background. Last fall, the officers and Alice decided to invest in some consultants to help the Office of Counsel improve our efficiencies in the way in which we are handling grievances. We started out with a week-long training for most of the staff of the Office of Counsel on Lean Six Sigma principles. I'm sure many of you in this room have some familiarity with that. There, as you can see, a lot of jargon involved. Jargon is difficult for me. I like pictures because I'm simple. So a few of the pictures that really resonated with me during that training session were these two. One really just reminding all of us that change is necessary for survival, and we are definitely at a point where a lot of our processes were no longer servicing the demands on the Office of Counsel, and that was really the fundamental issue. The other thing that I thought was very important is to remember that those of us in leadership are only aware of a tiny fraction of the operational problems that might exist in an organization, and that really the only people who are aware of 100% of those problems are the people at the boots on the ground level. And that those are the people who are really going to be critical in driving the changes that need to happen. So at the end of this training, we all walked away with Lean Six Sigma certifications and a whole new mindset for change and adaptation. The next phase of this was a two-day in-person workshop in January, during which we started by mapping our process. This is just part of the process between when a grievance arrives at the door of the Office of Counsel, only going up to the point where we start thinking about writing a report. So as you can see, there's a lot of activity, a lot of action going on, involving a lot of different people. So we figured out what our process is, and then we started talking about where in here is there waste, where is there waiting, what are the pain points that are slowing us down, and started addressing which of these things can we tackle first to make ourselves more efficient and more responsive to the requirements of our office. That was sort of distilled during this in-person workshop into two major efforts. One, to improve the grievance intake side of what we do, how we process things initially coming into the department, and then a second team of people were addressing our backlog, which for a variety of reasons over the last several years has been increasing, pandemic turnover, increased demand from stakeholders, and there are always reasons, but it's something that we recognize as a problem and that we knew we needed to address. So after that 2-day workshop, these two teams of people who were really driven by our wonderful paralegals and investigative staff, more so than, no disrespect, Alex, but more so than our lawyers, and that was very intentional. They got to work and they piloted a whole host of things. I'm only going to show you a couple highlights, but just in the effort to modernize and get us operating better. So the first team worked on the intake side, and one of the fundamental things we're going to change is we're going to start having an intake unit more like a district attorney's office does, where someone at the front end is doing really more targeted and aggressive triage of the incoming complaints in an effort to keep the ones that appear at the outset to be non-meritorious in one place and delegate only those that have legitimate actionable allegations to the rest of the deputy counsel so they can get to those more quickly and are not distracted or bogged down by files that really don't have any substance to them. So that's going to be a big change. We have not had that specific structure in the past. And then another thing that was tackled by this intake unit was this sort of tendency towards miscommunication with the public, with complainants at the front end, and trying to make sure that we are not causing more work for ourselves and more delays because we are not communicating well. So they reviewed all of the ways in which we communicate with complainants and found some places where we needed to really change and be more specific in our messaging. Here's an example. It used to be when a file was dismissed, we would instruct the member of the public who filed it that they could call with any questions. As you might imagine, they have questions, but what we realized is that we really can't answer them. There's not much we can tell them. We can't reveal to them what privileged advice we gave to the grievance committee, nor can we speculate about the reasoning of the grievance committee members who decided the file should be dismissed. So we determined there's only a few things we can really tell them, and usually the things that they ask are, is there a right to appeal? Can you explain why? And what should I do if I still feel like I have been wronged and I want to seek redress? So we just created a new letter that answered those questions instead of inviting a back and forth that was going to be ultimately futile. Another great example of modernization is the efforts of the intake team on our grievance complaint form. This is an ancient PDF template that we currently use, and as you can see, there are a few blanks just for identifying information of complainant and lawyer. Beyond that, it's just a big blank space. It's a creative writing exercise. And what we found is that we're wasting a lot of time in investigations at the front end because we're not even receiving enough information to know what to investigate. So one of the intake team members created this extraordinary, now this is a mock-up, don't get too excited, but this extraordinary new concept of having a web-based complaint form, which will be easier for the public to use, but also will help ensure that we are getting the information we need. One of the things we're going to do for, again, better narrative control and better messaging is at the front end require complainants to initial next to a list of things that we cannot do for them. The State Bar has very limited ability to act, and it's all of these things. There are a lot of things that we are recurrently asked to do that we cannot do. So we're asking them to acknowledge that at the outset. In addition, we will get all of the contact information we might want, but link it to our database so when they're specifying what attorney they're complaining about, we get the correct one. we get someone, so there's Peter. So for all those grievances we get against Peter, they start typing BOLAC into this form. It will pop up, it's automatically populated with your name at the change. But it will link to the membership database so we know which John Smith attorney they are trying to file the complaint against instead of trying to guess after the fact. Answering basic questions like, what is your connection to this lawyer? Did this lawyer represent you? If so, did you pay a fee? What kind of legal matter was this? Was there a court case? What county was the court case in? There are all of these things that we may know that we need that they don't necessarily know. So this will be an extraordinary improvement. Towards the end of the specific questions, there is also a space for the narrative. We're not discouraging the narrative, we just need more than that. And then also the ability to upload documents directly into this web-based portal as opposed to sending us, this is not an exaggeration, sometimes 70 emails overnight, one at a time with separate supplements. That is part of what has really, really slowed us down. The ability to sort of just piecemeal access at any time. So those are a couple things the intake team did. The backlog team worked on what, as I said, is a significant problem that we have right now. I've got to start this conversation by saying that one of the real emphases of the process improvement study is that you have to get data first. You have to figure out what you're dealing with. And so our teams work with a lot of the existing data on grievances. One of the somewhat concerning things they've identified is that our trend line since COVID, there's the dip this is a 10-year retrospective, there's a dip for 2020, 2021, but since then, we have been on a steady upward trajectory. This graph is number of grievances per week. Last year was the highest in this 10 years at 29, and this year we're at 33 a week. So that continues. Our workload is going to continue to increase, creating, either more demand for efficiencies or just more backlog. And so we have really no choice but to do things better and faster. One of the initiatives that the backlog team had tracked data on and promoted was just setting aside whole days where every lawyer in the office comes in, we spend time together, and all we do is focus on moving out our recommendations for dismissal. Because when people get focused on addressing pressing issues, urgent issues, serious misconduct, the files that they believe should be dismissed end up at the bottom of the drawer. So we've got to bring them out. We've got to get them done. And these have been really effective. These are just sort of a picture of our ongoing tally and measurement of our progress on the last dismissal day. We've got some trophies going for those who knock out the most of them, but they've been very successful. I mean, to get to almost 100 files disposed of in one day is significant, and we're going to continue doing this on a monthly basis, which should make a good dent in our backlog. Another thing we've done is minimize the amount of overwork we're doing on non-meritorious grievances. So we don't need to write 4 paragraphs to explain to the grievance chair that this complainant has not alleged anything that constitutes misconduct. That's almost all you have to say. So to get us out of the habit, as lawyers have, of using too many words, we created for those types of files a short form dismissal. So the backlog team developed this. They surveyed the reasons, the most common reasons for dismissals without investigation, identified them in a checkbox form, and now this can all be done inside of our database and generated sort of immediately. It was a very popular solution, not only internally. The immediate feedback that people inside the office gave was, this is awesome, this is very nice, this is fire, hot fire. But most importantly, our grievance chair said after drinking from the dismissal fire hose today, I think this looks fantastic. So that constitutes a win across the board. And we're definitely going to continue using that for files that just don't require an in-depth analysis. The last piece is really just more about managing our own levels of distraction and our ability to dig in, because not everything that's sitting in the drawer is there because there's nothing to it. Sometimes it's because it's so complex that we don't have enough time to get all the way through it. You have to set aside blocks of time to deal with those complex cases that tend to get older. And so really empowering the lawyers in the office to shut off distractions, to block out time in their schedule, and to designate it as a period of time where they will be focusing exclusively on their oldest files first. Not the ones that you can get done and they're easy, but the ones that are the oldest. And we haven't had enough time to really see major effects from this yet, but even in this is, I think, about a month worth of data, and you can see just if you're measuring the average age of a pending file in the Office of Counsel, we've managed to cut that down just incrementally, even over a month's time. So we're just going to keep doing this, allowing lawyers to say, I'm just not going to be available because I need to get some work done. And it sounds very simple, but it's harder and harder to do these days, given the demands of communications. So that is just sort of a few of the highlights. There are a lot of other projects going on. I'm so incredibly grateful for the staff that did this on top of everything else they already had to do. It was truly extraordinary, and it just really feels like above and beyond to not only do the work, but to care about how we do it and want to do it better for everyone. So it's been a great success, and we are going to, as I've noted here, some of the things we want to do are going to require some rule changes, so you'll probably hear about a subcommittee that is going to be working intensively on Subchapter B for a variety of reasons, some of them process improvement related. So, a little positive update. Any questions?
Thank you, Carmen, for yet another comprehensive and great presentation. Any questions for Carmen? Comments, observation? Should you have some after we adjourn, Carmen will certainly entertain your questions, so feel free to contact her as you deem appropriate. Next item on the agenda is the legislative report. Peter, floor is yours.
Yes, so nothing going on in the legislature this past quarter. The legislature conducted the State Bar Grievance Review Committee beginning in January and wrapping up in March, and we were had a seat at the table through Marcy and through past President Colin Willoughby was also a member of the committee. We attended all of the meetings, and the committee chair was welcoming to us to be able to present and participate and try to offer suggestions. We were pleased with that. We were pleased with the way that the committee handled the study of the issues that were brought up. I'm just trying to share the report. Marcy will talk a little bit more about this report tomorrow. But the full report is in the Friday full council meeting materials. There were a number of recommendations in the report. One about the due process, some due process changes at the grievance committee level, recommendations for how to deal with vexatious complainants, who should be able to file a grievance, a standing requirement, expungement of low-level discipline, and continued discussion on composition of the disciplinary hearing commission. How are they appointed? How should that commission be constituted? So those were the recommendations of the committee. The next step that we will now be dealing with over the next month or so is the bill that will come out of that report. The hope is that any sort of bill that is filed mirrors the recommendations in this report, which were worked on. The recommendations were worked out mostly between a working group of Carmen and some of the defense counsel, Alan Schneider, and I've sent that out in the email, but pointed out again how hard Carmen has worked on this. It's been phenomenal, and so the hope is that we can now keep the bill narrowly tailored to the recommendations in the report. And so the short session is hopefully going to be short. It is all we hear that it's going to be short. And so when we find out what the bill looks like, we'll get all that out to everybody. And depending on what's in it, we'll have potential need for communication and reaching out to your legislators. But the hope is that it stays nice in line with what the recommendations are.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions, comments, observations for Peter? All right, moving along. Now hear from the Issues Committee Chair, Marcy.
So the Issues Committee met and we received a report from the subcommittee to study deferral programs. Led by Walter Brock.
Just for the cold feet.
Issues Committee met yesterday.
And we heard from the subcommittee to study the deferral programs. Mr. Walter Brock gave a great report from his committee. And the recommendation from that committee was to basically include a reorganization of the random audit program and the TAC program into one TAC accounting compliance department. The idea being that low-level violations or technical violations of your trust accounting discovered through the random audit program or otherwise should not be subject of grievance, but rather educational opportunities to give lawyers a chance to learn from their mistakes and to do better. And so that's the whole point of that new department, that new program. And you have already approved today the publication, I think, of the rule amendments that would make that all happen. So, and then we also received a report from Brian on the implementation of the succession planning committee, and he gave us a little presentation of how you can now go onto your portal on the website and you can name a trustee. Is that what we're calling trustee? He showed us how you can do that. It's very simple. So there's just a link now on all of the lawyers' pages or portal, and they can go in and they can do that very, very easy, very quickly. So we need you to get that word out to all of the lawyers in all of your districts and encourage everyone to do that. It's very easy. I think it takes maybe 5 minutes to do it. So if y'all could please take that back home. And if you have any questions about that or have any problems with that, Brian, I'm sure will help you out. That's the report of the issue.
Wow.
Marcy. Thanks, Marcy. Moving along, we will now hear from Catherine Fry on access to justice and the Worker Per Committee.
The materials for the Access to Justice Committee are on SharePoint. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Catherine? Hearing none. Contact her as you deem necessary. Now we'll hear from the Authorized Practice Committee, the report from Bobby Bowers. Bobby.
Thank you, Todd. We met yesterday morning and we took action on 7 items that resulted in 4 letters of caution, NQ to be issued, and 3 dismissals, and we also received a status report regarding a pre-litigation matter. So that's our business for this morning.
Thank you. That is report to be passed on to the council, so thank you. All right, moving right along, the next is the report of the Communications Committee. Harold, the floor is yours.
Yes. I think the only thing we really had was the introduction of 2 new individuals to the Communications Committee, and I'll actually hand that over to Mr. Bolick because I'm bad with names. I'm good with faces. I'm bad with names unless you owe me money. So I'm about to borrow some. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Bowles to introduce or talk about the individuals that we
We were
introduced.
very thrilled to be able to introduce two new staff members who are going to be staffing the Communications Committee going forward and over time. The first is a Director of Communications that was just hired last week. His name is Philip Kolzewski. He's just retired from 27 years in the Marines doing communications, and he's everyone who has met him, I hope you already are thrilled to have met him. He's going to be just a great addition to the staff and really help us get our communications strategies more organized, have a developed plan. The second attorney that was hired at the bar as an agency attorney, she's here with us today. Ashley Ratliff stands here as an agency attorney. It relates to the communications committee because Ashley's going to help keep the communications committee in line as it relates to our restrictions under various statutes and court cases, and so Ashley's going to be really important to keep us, certain ones of you in line. Ashley comes over to us directly from the Department of Insurance, has been in a number of other areas, and is very highly regarded. We're very thrilled to have her. So that was really really all that we did in communications there.
Yes. Thank you.
That concludes your report.
Yeah, that concludes your report. Thank you.
We will now hear from Judge Hafton Mitchell on the Ethics Committee's work.
Good afternoon, everyone. We met almost the complete time that was allotted to us this morning. We have 8 total inquiries that we are working with 5 returning ones, and then 3 new ones. We're going to have 2 published opinions. One is proposed 2023 FEO3. That's the installation of third-party self-service kiosk in the lawyer's office, and inclusion of the lawyer in the third party's advertising efforts. That is one that we're republishing. And then publishing a new opinion, which is proposed 2024 FEO2, negotiating licensure, reporting capability during litigation. And then we have one other ethics advisory letter that we are sending. And so that is what we worked on. The detailed information in regards to all of these is in your materials. If you got any questions, Ron would love to talk to you about it. We had some really spirited discussions in our subcommittees as well as this morning in our full committee. We don't have any action items.
Thank you, Judge Mitchell, for that great report. Moving right along, we will now hear from our own Warren Savage from the Distinguished Service Committee. Warren,
Right here, thank you.
all yours.
I'll be as quick as possible. I'd like to go ahead and move to go into closed session pursuant to NC General Statute 143-318.11A2 to prevent the